The Jurassic franchise is without a doubt the most popular trilogy when it comes to dinosaurs, with their most famous being the T-Rex and Velociraptor. These movies are especially known for the big boss fights between the two megatheropods ever since the Spinosaurus murked the bull T-Rex back in 2001. While most of these dinosaurs were based off of the real life versions back then, they still are for the most part pretty inaccurate when it comes down to their actual counterparts. Things such as the Spinosaurus and the Jurassic Park Rexes don't have a lot of features that align with what we know today about these animals, although those same inaccuracies have made these creatures capable of performing certain things that just should not be possible, like a T-Rex able to match the speed of a car, or a Spinosaurus that has enough power to hold an adult Rex in place. With all the upgrades these dinosaurs have gotten from Biosyn, you'd think that they'd be able to destroy the actual animals they were based on, but you'd actually be surprised for some. Evolution has produced some of the most refined predators that have had millions of years to hone their abilities, and some of these could actually outperform the franchise's dinosaurs. In this video I'm going to be comparing the Jurassic franchise megatheropods to the real things, and seeing just how well they would fare in a match against each other. This list is based on my own interpretation on what would happen if these animals made contact with each other, and it's not meant to be law. I'll be as fair as possible and see whose attributes outweigh the other. Before we get into it, consider hitting that like and subscribe button and watch to the end. It really does help me in the algorithm and allows me to continue making videos like this. With the introduction finally over, let's compare the Jurassic series megatheropods against the real life versions. First up, we have our favorite sailboy, the Spinosaurus. The first carnivore introduced as a T-Rex killer. It really took off after that fight scene with the bull Rex, and left all the Tyrannosaurus fans sobbing and inhaling copium. However, after that, karma's hit the Spinosaurus and its fans really hard. This animal went from being a bipedal killing machine that was the king of Africa, to a thin-snouted goose that walks on all fours to efficiently distribute its weight. Spinosaurus aegypticus itself is always changing every year due to some new damn discovery. In the early 2000s, it had a classic theropod stance but more upright, with a heavily exaggerated size and claws. Then in the mid-2000s, features such as its skull and stance started to change, and finally in the newest timeline, it's a quadruped with a square sail and possibly couldn't have swum. Yep, that's right, some articles proposed that this animal possibly couldn't even swim because of its bone density, but the reports arguing that it can are more credible, so for now we'll use that. In terms of size, it's a bit tricky. The average weight for this animal is between 7.8 and 8 tons. However, with some fragmentary remains, there are estimates of it approaching the 9-ton mark. After the World War, most fossils of this animal have been destroyed, so it's hard to get a clear estimate. But for this interaction, we'll use the 9-ton range because, trust me, it's gonna need all the help it can get. Jurassic Park Spinosaurus is in the 8-ton range in the movie, but in Camp Cretaceous it's more than 10 tons, which gives it a size advantage over even the largest Aegypticus estimate. Jurassic Park Spinosaurus was not even supposed to be a thing because it was an illegal project led by Wu, and was mistreated constantly. Even in the end, when it was left alone, it had a rough life, since after being left on its own it would have been around 25 feet and had to compete with the other carnivores of the island, including the Rexes, Ceratosaurus, and the numerous raptors that spread out across Isla Sorna. This brings us into the competition category. Both of these animals had some serious competition from other top predators in their respective ecosystems. Spinosaurus aegypticus lived in Cretaceous Africa, and contrary to pop culture belief, it was not the king of the continent. That distinction went to the Carcharodontosaurus. It had to contend with that, large crocodilomorphs, and a bunch of medium-sized carnivores like the Abelisaurs and Carposuchus. Biosyn Spinosaurus had a similar amount of competition, although not quite as diverse. When it was a juvenile, it had to deal with Rexes and other medium-sized theropods that were also now loose on the island, and let's not forget the bioengineered velociraptors that were the size of small Utahraptors and have enough intelligence to trick humans in some cases. Unlike the real Spinosaurus, Biosyn's version didn't have a choice when it came down to conflict with the other predators because it hunted the same herbivores as the other ones, such as the island's many hadrosaurs. On top of that, it would actively seek out its competition as stated in the movie, where the scent of Tyrannosaur urine itself attracts him. The Spinosaurus aegypticus did have a choice in some sense when it came to conflict because of its predatory niche, choosing a mainly aquatic lifestyle and hunting fish and the occasional small dinosaur that came close to shore, which puts it out of direct conflict with the mainland carnivores. However, disputes over carcasses would almost certainly happen from time to time, just not quite the way Planet Dinosaur portrayed it. So for this section on battle intelligence and handling other megatheropods, I'd give it a tie. The real version did not actively seek out fights because it's not a moving monster, but it did have to deal with more threats from time to time. When it comes down to raw power, speed and durability, it starts to become very one-sided. The Jurassic Park Spinosaurus takes almost every stat. The real Spinosaurus' only advantage is that it has a better center of gravity due to it being a quadruped, so it would be harder to topple over, and it could have a better chance of reaching the taller movie Spinosaurus' neck. But that's where it ends, because unlike most other matchups where it has the aquatic advantage, the opponent is actually equal in that department. Its shorter height would make it much more susceptible from having the top of its neck grabbed, and if Biosyn's version can snap a T-Rex's neck, then an animal with a significantly thinner one isn't going to fare well. And this Spinosaurus has enough power to rip open a plane, break thin canyon walls and destroy a metal fence. Jurassic Park Spinosaurus has unreal durability too. In both the series and the movie, it takes no observable damage after being bitten repeatedly from adult Rexes. As a matter of fact, it seems to motivate it sometimes. Its sail, which is supposed to be the most vulnerable part, took the impact from a flying plane without any damage, and even when the animal rolled over on the thing, no harm was done. And for speed, Jurassic Park Spinosaurus takes that too, since the real version had a top speed of around probably 15 miles per hour. If these two were placed in the same environment, it's likely that Biosyn's version would be the aggressor and won't recognize the real one as the same species. More than likely, it would actively try to kill the Egypticus, and while the real Spinosaurus has formidable claws, it wouldn't be enough to deter an animal that tanks Rex bites. Also, the sail of nature's creation doesn't have nearly as much durability as Hollywood, so that's another weakness that can be exploited. So for this interaction, it's a clear win for the modified Spinosaurus, with an 85 to 90% success rate. It's bigger, faster, stronger and more durable than nature's version. However, this starts to change with the next dinosaur and has been a topic of debate for a while now. Rexy versus the real T-Rex was a topic heavily discussed with the dinosaur community, mostly because both characters are relatively similar in terms of size and power. I'll start off first with the franchise's Rexes, more specifically Rexy. Rexy is the oldest Rex in the trilogy and the most popular. She also has a reputation of kinda losing to anything her size or larger in the franchise, but some of that is due to age. In the novels, Rexy is an absolute monster. Instead of turning the car over, she grabbed it and threw it into the air. On top of that, she's a strong swimmer and has enough power to bring down a sauropod, which is impressive, even though the sauropods in this franchise aren't really that, you know. For this comparison, we won't be using the novels though, because some of the stuff she does in the novels she can't do in the movie despite it being the same timeline. Also, we're going to be looking at Rexy at her current proportions because that's her at her largest. So feats such as the car chase won't be counted because now that she's at her max size, she can't push past 22 miles per hour. She's around 48 feet and 9 tons at the end of Dominion, which makes her size similar to that of larger Rex specimens in the fossil record. The most notable asset she has is her durability. Being able to repeatedly get bitten by a large hybrid and having her face stomped on by a 10-ton animal is a remarkable feat. When it comes to real life, the sizes are pretty variable. The most recognized specimen, which is Sue, weighs just over 8 tons, making her about Rexy size. But other specimens like Edie Cope and Goliath change things, especially with Goliath, which is the largest Rex that has been found so far. Lower estimates give him a weight of around 11 tons, with the higher estimates making him heavier than 13. If we use this weight, he would outclass Rexy by 4 tons. But I'm gonna use the safest weight, which is 11, and that's still bigger than her regardless. The reason I used Goliath and not Sue is to put the strongest versions of these animals against each other. For Jurassic Park, the strongest Rex is Rexy, and in reality, that is Goliath and Edie Cope. Let's get into weaponry, so I'll address this firsthand. Some people scale Rexy's bite much higher than it is because she put down a carno. They say that since Toro took explosions to the body and survived, her being able to kill another Carnotaurus is a feat when it really isn't, to be honest. In the Jurassic franchise, different individuals have different levels of power, despite them being the same species. For example, Blue is stronger and can take more damage than her own packmates. So just because Toro is that durable, doesn't mean all Carnos are, and even if it was, Rexy being able to take down an animal weighing 3 tons, which is 3 times smaller than her, isn't that surprising. As a matter of fact, her bite didn't even kill the Carno, we just see it struggling after she placed her foot on it. Now I am aware of other forms of Rexy, especially the one where she bit into tanks, I think. But that Rexy and this Rexy are not the same one. They even have a different color, so we're not gonna use that one. With that out of the way though, I'm not saying her bite force is weak, because she is able to do significant damage to a hybrid her size with some armor once she gets a firm hold. That same hybrid was able to take a bite from a mosasaurus weighing more than 50 tons, accompanied with the extra force of gravity built up after it came crashing down, and it didn't die right on the spot, while Rexy was able to cause significantly more damage. The bite force of these animals vary despite being kinda similar. Rexy's teeth looks more like that of a carnivores, which are meant for leaving deep lacerations and causing blood loss. However, her skull does kinda limit her full potential, but considering what she's able to do to an Indominus, I'd say it's not that far behind from the real versions at around 13,000 psi for specimens like Sue. But for something the size of a Goliath, he would take bite force. If something of his size was to bite the velociraptor Rexy did, the animal would probably pop like a balloon. So bite force goes to Goliath. However, the one thing Rexy 100% has the upper hand in is a headbutt. Rexes smaller than Rexy have destroyed a city bus and brought a cracked out Spinosaurus to its knees. And Rexy's no different. She was able to topple the hybrid even in her weakened state. While the real T-Rex could incorporate some head attacks, it wouldn't be as strong. Another thing Rexy takes is, as I said before, durability. As much as I'm on the side of reality, some of the things Rexy has survived is just insane. In a weakened state, she got ragdolled by the Indominus and was still able to fight. On top of that, again, she got her head stomped on by a 10-ton Giganotosaurus and still continued the battle while continuously taking bites from the larger carnivore. If a real T-Rex was placed in that position, chances are that it's gonna die on impact when that much weight is put on its skull. The real T-Rex did have a fair amount of durability, with bite marks shown from skulls that have healed over, and one even had a piece of its tail removed and lived. But I highly doubt that they can take the same damage as Rexy. The real Rex does have more battle experience though. While Rexy has fought 2 other large theropods over the span of her life, the real version was in direct competition with each other, so conflict was the norm, while Rexy most of her life had to deal with velociraptors only. In terms of prey items, the two are pretty much equal though. They both hunt and kill relatively the same prey items, even though Jurassic Park's herbivores are a bit nerfed. I know most of you know this matchup, well, not this particular matchup, but the matchup between Rexy and Sue because of Goji Center. And while I do agree with majority of his videos, I do kinda disagree with some parts of this one. In my personal opinion, with Rexy and Sue being relatively equal in terms of size, I think that Rexy wins. The real version would be more stable and less likely to topple over, but it also isn't constantly dodging Rexy's attacks like in the video and making her ram into her surroundings. Also, Rexy would be able to land at least a couple of bites in and do some damage, so Sue wouldn't be leaving injury free even if she did win. On top of that, Rexy has taken damage that would most likely kill Sue, so the bites from the real Tyrannosaurus wouldn't be as detrimental as you would think in the thicker parts of Rexy's body. With that said, against the largest Rex that weighs 11 tons, I'm gonna give this one to nature, but again barely. Rexy's a crash out, let's be honest. Unlike the other predators like the Spinosaurus and Indominus that use some sort of strategy when fighting, even though they are kinda crash outs too, she usually just aims for the throat or the nearest thing she can bite. While a real Rex had to strategize in order to live, because if it gets gored by a Triceratops or its ribs smashed by an Ankylosaur, it's not gonna have a cooperation to nurse it back to health. And for Goliath to reach the size he did, he would have been an old Tyrannosaurus with a lot of experience, so he would likely look for ways to bring Rexy down while reducing the risk of getting heavily injured. And with his 2-ton weight advantage, he could possibly match or even surpass Rexy's strength and overpower her. So this section goes to Mother Nature. As much as I like to look at things from a biological standpoint, at parity with Rexy being the same size as any other Rex, she's winning most of the time. I hate to say it, but the power scales are right in some sense, that real dinosaurs usually can't compete with the movie counterparts, but Goliath's sheer size and power just gives him the edge. The third dinosaur has gained popularity due to it being the newest large theropod in the franchise that's able to kill Rexes with ease. But could it do the same to its real life counterpart? Often seen as a new rival to T-Rex in terms of debate since, Spinosaurus has been nerfed so badly that it's out of the game, the Giganotosaurus is the second largest carnivore to have walked the earth, at least in reality. In the Jurassic franchise, it is the largest, period. Zeb is one of the most powerful animals in the entire franchise and could kill a T-Rex faster than any other dinosaur we've seen so far. Well, at least the prologue Giga. Zeb too, to be honest. In the prologue, a Giganotosaurus defeated a Rex in less than a minute. Zeb is 10 tons, with the only other carnivore being bigger being the Spinosaurus in Camp Cretaceous. And with this weight, it easily overpowers other top tiers like Rexy. And even when he received a bite from Rexy on the snout, like it barely affected him. It was also stated that this Giganotosaurus was capable of taking down sauropods like Sauroposeidon by itself. The real Giganotosaurus weighs 8 tons, with one of the largest being the holotype reaching 9. but there is some fragmentary remains of another specimen called MUCPV-95, which is estimated to be 13% larger, but that's quite debatable seeing what few remains we've gathered, so I'll stick to the 9-ton largest estimate. This animal had a bite force of 8,000 psi. Most people say that the Giganotosaurus and other members of this family have a weak bite force because all they do is compare to that of a T-Rex, which doesn't make any sense because the T-Rex's entire gig was its bite force. While the Gigas was meant for blood loss and slicing, bite force aside, it had large arms that could be used to further slash and weaken prey. Alright, that's just about as much good stuff I can say about Carlini. The real Giganotosaurus is outclassed in almost every single department but speed. In real life, a Giga would lose to a Rex, and Zeb is able to bring down a Hollywood T-Rex with little difficulty. On top of that, it's heavily armored on the upper side of its body, and its claws can actually grapple similar sized targets like the Spinosaurus because of how their arms are placed. Whereas the real life Giga's arms are more to the side and pointed inwards, so it won't be as effective in holding down other large predators. And if the statement about Biosense Giga being able to bring down sauropods on its own is true, then it just adds to the strength. Also, Jurassic World's Giganotosaurus has more battle intelligence, seeing that in its timeline they also lived with Rexes somehow, so that's direct competition with another carnivore similar in size, apart from its own species. While the real Giganotosaurus only really had to compete with itself, and there is speculation that they could have lived in family groups. With the Giganotosaurus being my second favorite dinosaur, it's with a heavy heart that I must say it just gets destroyed. Zeb already outclasses the real version in most things, including height, which even more so would allow it to do something similarly to what the Spinosaurus did to the Rex in the movie, and just hold it in place and start shaking. There isn't really much I can say here. I mean, even if the real Giganotosaurus could manage to land a bite on Zeb, he would more than likely just shake it off and turn the tables. So this fight is another low diff to the Jurassic franchise. The very last one, however, is probably even more sad when you come down to it. The last megatheropod that's based off a real animal in the franchise is the Tarbosaurus. Jurassic World's version came in Camp Cretaceous Hidden Adventure and was meant to be another dinosaur attraction like Rexy was, but on a different side of the island. The real counterpart, Tarbosaurus bataar, is the second largest tyrannosaur species and is often called the T-Rex's little cousin. While in reality it wasn't an exact replica of the T-Rex due to a more narrow skull and being less bulky in general, in the Camp Cretaceous episode, the Tarbosaurus is basically a reskinned Rex with a different color scheme and spikes on the back. The Tarbosaurus, I'm so fed up of calling it the Tarbosaurus, so I'll just give it a name. I'll name her Red. Red is 7.5 to 7.7 tons, making her just about the same size as the average or slightly smaller than a Rex. The real Tarbosaurus is significantly smaller. On average, it's 5.5 tons, with the very largest barely approaching 6.2. It's not just losing the weight department, it also doesn't match the speed of Red, who was able to keep up with the car, which makes me believe this is a young animal. Because Rexy was able to do the same when she was younger, but now that she's at her largest, she can't even catch a fairly fit person. In contrast, the real Tarbosaurus had a top speed of 25 miles per hour, which is very fast for a megatheropod, but falls short when it comes to a young Rexy and this Tarbosaurus. When it comes to battle experience, the real life version takes it, but not by much, because it did have to compete with its own species when it came down to food and territory, as well as taking down dangerous prey like the Dinosaurs that weighed 7 tons or more. Although like most real life predators, it mostly would have targeted the sick or the old. Red likely didn't deal with many other carnivores when it broke out, other than Rexy and Toro, and she also doesn't have that much battle intelligence, because while other theropods in the franchise make sure that their target is dead, or at least they thought their target was dead before continuing everything else, Red takes her eye off another apex just because she threw it down. When it comes to durability, Red has probably the worst of any large theropod in the franchise. A bite from Rexy that lasted like 2 seconds killed or significantly wounded her, while prolonged bites from Rexes with other dinosaurs didn't cause life-threatening injuries. With that said, I don't think the real Tarbosaurus would fare much better, mainly due to how small it is, so I think Rexy's bite would cause a similar effect, but probably not as fast. When it comes down to power, Red easily takes it. Apart from sending Toro flying, she was able to send Rexy, who was more than 8 tons at the time, in the air and onto her back, and it's very unlikely that the real version could pull this off. Red could have probably done a lot more damage there if she just locked in and wasn't distracted by the campers. The real Tarbosaurus had a similar bite force to the Giganotosaurus at 9,000 psi, which is impressive for something that weighs 3 tons less, but it still isn't stronger than Red, who is built exactly like the Rexes of the franchise and has a similar size. To be very honest, if they did a deathmatch, the real Tarbosaurus could cause some significant damage if it gets a bite or two in, possibly leaving permanent damage to some areas. But even if it does, at some point in the fight, Red is going to overpower it and take the dub. With no distractions this time, she would finish it off if she knocks it over. So that's another point to the Jurassic franchise, this time with Red taking the dub with low to possibly medium difficulty. This video was not one I originally planned on making, but I rewatched Nigel Marven's The Giant Claw and saw the Tarbosaurus and just wondered how it would fare against Jurassic Worlds, which is how this video came to be. That's just about a wrap for this one, guys. I know a lot of you are probably going to disagree with the franchises taking most of the points, but it's kinda true that movie dinosaurs usually beat real life dinosaurs. The Rex is the only outlier, and that's just because of a significant size advantage. If it was at parity, Bison would have won again. This isn't me being biased, it's just that the franchise's theropods have walked off damage that would have honestly crippled or even killed the real life versions. But again, that's just my opinion, so don't take it too seriously. Anyway, after all that recording, I'm pretty spent, so don't forget to like and subscribe. I'll see you in the next one.